Hello, and thank you once again for joining us here at the Valley Mills Christian Church podcast. My name is Joe McNeil. I'm the Spiritual Growth Coordinator here.
I'm Ezra Davis, the Student Minister.
And I'm Mark Starrett, the Worship Minister.
So today we're going to talk about our story, actually. We're going to give you a little bit of an insight, a look at our past, and kind of what Christ has done for us and through us, and sometimes to us, I guess. Right? So it's a very important part of every Christian's life, I think. And really, honestly, I'll even go so far as to say I think it's an important part of every human's life, just to be able to talk about where they've come from, what they've been through, because there are so many people out there that are struggling with all kinds of stuff that you have no idea, when you walk up to them. So we're going to go over that a little bit and then talk about a few other things. But Mark, how about you? Would you like to go first?
Sure, thanks. So I've only been the worship minister here at Valley Mills Christian Church for only a few months now. I just graduated college in May, but my story goes way back. I would say even to the time I was born. A lot of you may know this about me already, but I was adopted from Vietnam. I was adopted from an orphanage when I was about a year old. And it's just a miracle, really, that God placed, this dream and vision in my parents' hearts. They grew up in Ohio, and He placed a vision in these people's hearts to just adopt children. And I think that adoption really is amazing. I think it's all has to go along with God adopting us as His children into His family. So it's just a really good picture in living out this illustration of adoption and everything that I've just taken really seriously in my life. I don't take for granted at all my adoption, and I believe that this country and that the family that I was raised in gave me so many different opportunities that I otherwise would not have had. So it starts there back when I was adopted. So I grew up in a Christian home, and I was lucky enough to be raised by great Christian parents. I grew up going to church camp. I grew up going to church every morning in Sunday school. And my faith really didn't become my own until probably I was about 12. Right before I decided to get baptized, and something just kind of hit me. It was during one of the camps I went to, and I just figured, there's a calling on my life, and there's a purpose on my life that I felt drawn to, and I knew from that moment that I wanted to be involved in ministry or in the church in some way. Didn't really know that I would be working at a church for a living or a career, in a sense. It's just looking back at it now, just how far it's come, and that it just started from this way that even before I was born. And I talked to my parents a lot, and I remember my mom said that she had always wanted to adopt, and just carrying that forward into the future. I started developing my faith more, and I was very much a baby in the faith at 12 when I was baptized. But I kept growing in my relationship with God. I got involved with the worship band at my home church, Parkview Christian Church, and that was really good and a really good experience for me. And just I felt like I had a place in the church, just being young, and I felt that I guess my abilities or talents were valued, and I think that's very important in any church today. And going into high school, I was more involved with the youth group and going on mission trips, and it only solidified that notion that I was called into some kind of ministerial duty or calling or whatever you want to call it. But then I had this decision on, where I should go to college. In high school, they always pressure everybody like, hey, you need to go to college or else you're not going to survive in the world, basically, or you're going to be seen as, I guess, a second-rate citizen. And so I started applying and visiting to different colleges, and some of them were Christian colleges, some of them were just regular secular colleges, and some are art schools. And honestly, at that point, I really didn't know. I figured I could just go and get like a business degree or something and just figure it out while I was there. Turns out I had committed to a college locally, and I went there for a year and hated it. And that was the time where I told my parents, I was like, I don't see myself here. And of course it came up, they're like, well, what do you want to do? And I just told them that I wanted to serve as a worship minister, because I've been looking into that. That was a thing that people were doing. So there's a lot of discussion about that. There's a lot of disappointment in that as well, from many different parties and different situations regarding that. But the result was I took a gap year, and during that gap year I worked, and during that time I grew so much in realizing that my calling was definitely for ministry. So I wanted to go to a Christian college, and but my, I guess, GPA from the College of Worcester wasn't good enough to get any extra academic scholarships, so I needed to find scholarships somewhere else, and so I needed to find a college that was also willing to give out a track and field scholarship. And I landed at Milligan College, visited a couple times, and I loved it, and ended up graduating from there with a Bible degree. And during that process, I've been leading worship in church and also on campus during our Vespers and chapel services. And I realized that if I wanted to continue with my goal of becoming a worship minister, I needed to apply for those jobs. And it was basically left all up to my faith in God, and that I believe that God would bring me wherever He wanted me to be. So ultimately it led me here to Valley Mills Christian Church, and like I said, I haven't even been here, a half year yet. So yeah.
Well, cool. We're glad you're here, of course.
Yeah, just not getting your feet wet, man. Like that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
My time.
Sure, if you want to go. I did want to say something real quick though, like as obviously Mark, you said you were adopted and everything, and I wanted to kind of bring this up when you said that. There's a lot of Christians out there who obviously are strong, adamantly against abortion, and I am too, of course. Like I believe that that's killing. I believe it's nothing shy of murder, and alternatively, or more to the fact of it, I think that Christians need to be more supportive of adoption, because it's like being mad at something but not proposing a solution, or not sticking behind something that helps prevent that. And if more parents out there who, for whatever reason, between them and God, they don't want to have that baby, then they need to know that there's options out there. And I think if more people supported it, more people got behind it, we would see more of that happening. And unfortunately, it's really expensive. I actually looked into it because my wife and I had talked about potentially doing that, but it's very, very, very expensive. And it's an awesome thing when people are financially blessed to be able to do that, and maybe someday that'll be us, or we'll be in a situation. I know sometimes it's not always expensive if there's a situation where a lady's about to give a child up and can't take care of it, and the parents work out the details there or whatever. But I just feel like you need to be a strong advocate for the alternative to abortion. as well. And hopefully that's not too heavy-handed for a lighter podcast, but just
No.
stay on the positive side of it. You know, if you feel strongly against abortion, please equally feel strongly for adoption as well.
Well, and just something that I want to tell you. I mean, you are not poster child by any means, but I mean, you are a walking testament to having adoption work. You know, I mean, who knows where you would have been, who knows what you would have been doing with your life if you hadn't got adopted. And like Joe said, I mean, adoption is so much better than the alternative in taking that life and in doing that. So I believe wholeheartedly, and I agree with all of you guys, that is this adoption portion of it, and it so plays in a vital role to you into how your story is the way it is. You know what I mean? So by all means, I mean, if you are financially stable to adopt, God willing, I hope Danielle and I would someday be financially able to do that, because that's something that God's laid on our heart too. So.
Right on. Ezra, why don't you go right into talking about yourself?
Oh, great.
Tell us a little about yourself there.
So I actually was born and raised about, I would say, 10 minutes from here, Mooresville, Indiana. I grew up at down the road at Mount Gilead, going to youth group there. I felt where I accepted Christ in my life. It was June 14th, 2001. And I was actually at Camp Allendale, and one of my counselors, who I think he's in the area now. I'm not for sure, but one of my counselors that week, we were talking about how Christ. We were talking about Peter, and we were talking about how Peter was Peter, you know, and we got to the story about him getting out of the boat, and one of my camp counselors, I kind of talked to him roughly. I talked to my dad about getting baptized, and he looked at me one night, and after everything was settled down, we were getting ready for bed, and he says to me, "Ezra, just get out of the boat, man. Like, dude, like let's do it. Like, let's get out of the boat." So the next day, I called my dad and I said, I want it to be today. Typically, they don't do baptisms at camp on a Thursday evening, but that time we did. It was very cold. And something that I'll never forget, because my dad, even though quiet, is very, very kind of like a burly guy. I mean, he's a former military guy, and he's straight and to the point, and when he makes up his mind, he does things. And we were down in the pool, and he doesn't. He's a very reserved person, and he said to the crowd, he goes, "We're going to do things a little differently." And he grabbed my hand, raised it over our heads, and we shouted the confession of faith. And that is something that'll be etched in my mind forever. But that's where I began my spiritual journey. Is that camp counselor going, "Dude, you need to get out of the boat. You need to go and give your life to Christ." And it was just like an aha moment almost. After that was like when I was in 6th grade. After that, I attended Mooresville High School, junior high and high school down the road. And actually, I dated my wife our junior year, so we are high school sweethearts. You can, oodle and all over that later, but
So precious.
I know, right? So we were high school sweethearts. I met my wife there, and we went to the same youth group. Actually, that was our first date. It was after the youth group. We went all out to McDonald's, so I was a cheapskate. So, but no.
I think she should have known by that moment.
Oh, I know what she was getting into. Crazy story though about that. So I take her home, and at the time I drove a Dodge truck that had leather seats. It was a bench seat instead of bucket seats, and I farted, and it rumbled all the way across the seat. That was pretty awkward. But anyway, so So that was, I finished up.
So how much did you end up having to pay her to continue seeing you?
About $100 a week.
Nice.
She was very, very expensive.
Man.
But eventually I got her to commit to me and marry me. and we have a beautiful, beautiful daughter together. So, but no, so I met my wife at high school, and then we went off to college. Actually, to this date, I had my heart set on going to Johnson Bible College at the time. And that's where I wanted to go. I literally told my mom and dad, I'm going to be a youth minister at Johnson. That's where I'm going to go get my degree. And they were like, okay, whatever. And in the meantime, my lead pastor, who's still there, Jeff Fall, goes, hey man, you really need to check out KCU, Kentucky Christian University. They have a football program. They have a bunch of stuff that, hey, you need to look into this. So I eventually, about 2 weeks after I applied to Johnson, I applied to KCU, which honestly, to tell you the truth, sorry KCU, but KCU was on my back burner at that point. So about midway through June, I didn't receive anything from of Johnson or anything. So I said, well, I want to do a visit to Kentucky Christian. So we loaded up in the car and we went down to good old Grayson, Kentucky, and we did a visit. And I fell in love with the campus there. And still to this day, I have not received a rejection letter or an acceptance letter from Johnson. So Johnson peeps, if you want to get on that, get on that.
I think that you're going to get it in the mail here soon.
Right, I hope so. Because I've been telling this ever since I graduated KCU. I've been telling them this every time that I come in contact with. But so I went to KCU, went there for 4 years and got my youth and family ministries degree. Some awesome people down there. Podunk Town, USA. You just head east on 64, and about time you almost get to West Virginia, about 45 minutes from West Virginia, pops to school. Very, very cool people, very, very down-to-earth people. After actually my senior year, I got my first ministry down there, the church of about 100. I was the youth minister, and Kentucky does a lot of things different. Church is definitely one of them.
They have drive-through liquor stores.
They do have drive-through liquor stores. It's pretty funny. But no, that church turned out not to be a right fit for Danielle and I. Oh yeah, by the way, when I forgot this, and hopefully my wife does not listen to this podcast. But anyway, when I graduated in 2012, we also got married. My wife and I got married and moved down to Kentucky. So I was there at that ministry for about 2 years. And then some things happened. I won't go into detail on here. Some things happened. Some integrity issues, not on my part, but through different things, I got word that things were just not looking good for me. So Danielle and I moved back here to Indiana. Actually, Danielle got a job faster than I did. I applied to a lot of churches and didn't get the benefit of the doubt. So we kind of moved back, and I had no job for about a week or two. I applied at Walmart in Plainfield and was there for about 5 months, and then that's when I started getting interviews here. And then January of 2014, I got a call from Bob, and he said, "Hey man, let's go get lunch. Do you like Chinese?" I said, "Yep." And so that started our relationship there, and I've never looked back since. So it's been a very, very cool ride, understanding where God has put me and how God's put me. I've learned a lot. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that. Learned. I don't know if that's like the technical term, but anyway, I've understood a lot, and I've grown a lot since 2014. But no, I love here. I love this atmosphere, and I love what we're doing here. So that's my story.
First Peter 3:15 says, "But in your hearts revere Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have, but do this with gentleness and respect. And we're talking today about kind of our short life stories, where we came from, why we're serving in ministry, and that kind of thing. And I think that's an important tool for every Christian to have. So think about that. Think about what you would say if someone asks you, why do you believe what you believe, or why are you doing what you're doing? So as for me, just heard from Mark and Ezra there. Mine is a bit different. I was not raised in church, nor did I go to a Bible college. So you can railroad me out of town right now. I'm not the same, but that's okay. I think God still loves me. So
You think?
I hope so. Sometimes I know that I don't deserve it, but He does it anyway. So the way that my story goes is, and I won't go into a whole bunch of tear-jerking details, but I didn't have a super great life growing up. My family was poor. I was made fun of a lot because I didn't own a lot of clothes or nice clothes, and that was kind of a big deal. I don't know if it still is in high school. I hope not. That's such a terrible thing to make fun of kids for, not having clothes, and stuff like that.
It is.
So anyway, so my parents weren't Christians, but they were very strict. They didn't let me cuss. They didn't drink. They didn't smoke. They didn't do any of that stuff. But my dad was a very hard man. He worked 2 jobs most of his life, and I can understand why it'd be hard if that were the case. But we didn't really ever get along when he was around. He was very angry and upset all the time and stuff like that. So no surprise, during high school I rebelled quite a lot. I was a punker. I had a mohawk. I had the leather jacket.
Punk Rock Joe.
Punk Rock Joe was my
That's
nickname
his
in high school.
nickname.
That legitimately is my nickname in high school.
Yes!
Because the only real nickname I had. So you'll hear me say that a lot, that it's my nickname in high school, just as a joke, but that actually is my only real nickname. So anyway, I was a punker, and I went to a lot of punk rock shows, treated a lot of people very terribly. I vandalized things, stole things, did some drugs, did some drinking, did a whole lot of things with girls that I shouldn't have been doing. And it was somewhere in that high school period that my friend Corey started inviting me to his church. Now, he was just as bad as I was. Don't let him say otherwise. If he listens to this, he was just as bad as I was. Maybe not just as bad. He was pretty bad. But anyway, he invited me, and I'm like, well, what's in it for me? And I went one time, and I was like, oh, there's a bunch of cute girls here. So I kept going to church because that's where cute girls were at. Anyway, so I was going there for a while, and I guess some of it started to kind of seep in a little bit. And there's a big part of my story involving a kid that I knew in high school that was going there. And he was someone who hung around with us when we partied and did this stuff. Now, he never did any of that stuff. He was the fuddy-duddy Christian who sat in the corner, kind of scoffing us as we were smoking pot or whatever it was we were doing. And his name was Teddy. And Teddy was always around, but he was always kind of like I said, that Christian stick in the mud that was trying to make us feel bad for doing what we were doing. And high school ended. I went from having friends in every single area of the school, which obviously I overcame people making fun of me, and that's a whole other story. But I ended up losing all these friends because everybody moves away to college and everything like that. And I tell people that I was in technical school because technically I was enrolled at IUPUI, I just didn't go. So it's technical, so it's a joke. It's not very funny, but it's a joke. So I was so depressed at that point in my life, physically couldn't get out of bed in the morning and stuff like that. It was really rough, really terrible. My parents weren't really around or supportive, so they didn't really, help me out in that sense. So there I am laying in bed a lot, and Teddy kept coming over to my house because he was going to school locally. And some days he'd just sit there, and I'd flat out ignore him. I'd lay in bed and I'd turn around, and he'd just sit there. I don't know if he let himself in or if it's actually part of the story that's still a mystery to me. I have no idea how he kept getting into my house. But anyway, he kept doing that, and one day he finally got me up out of bed, and we were going to Goodwill. We used to do this thing called Goodwill hunting, which is kind of funny because it's like the movie, but we would go to a bunch of different Goodwills just looking for dumb t-shirts or something like that. And we were sitting in the car, and he was driving, and I was like, I don't get this, Teddy. I was like, we made fun of you in high school, we treated you terribly, you know, we vandalized your stuff, and, you know, this whole entire time you just kind of stuck by, and I don't understand why you're trying to be nice to me now when I was never nice to you at all. And he said, this is what Christ does for us, even though we don't deserve it, he loves us. And that just broke me. It broke me so hard. And from that point on, I got super involved in church, really came to know the Lord, and just it's kind of like a Saul to Paul conversion at that point. Really just changed my life. And I've been serving in various ministries. I've done a whole lot of everything. I feel like everything I could even try remotely to do, I've done just to get the experience of it. And so now here I am. I'm at Valley Mills. I've been here for about a year now. This is actually my first time in ministry as far as like a paying ministry thing. I'm here part-time doing that. But one big thing for me, and it's actually something that I learned from Teddy's dad at that old church, was how important discipleship is and evangelism is, and I've always been a huge advocate of both of those avenues. So while I started off leading worship until Mark got here, my true passion and heart is really for teaching and equipping Christians, because just like I was saying how important it is to know your story and be able to share that story, I think it's equally important for churches to teach and educate and equip their congregation to get out and witness and minister in the right way. Because let's face it, modern times Christianity, there's a lot of judgmental Christians out there, and they're doing it wrong. They're giving everybody a bad name. It should be about love. And I'm not trying to say you should be cool with everybody's sin, but I'm not saying that you should judge anybody either. So, but that's where I'm at. I'm here now. I think the other two mentioned a little bit about their relationships. I'm married and I have 3 kids that are all teenagers. So say a couple
I
of
did
years.
not yet. I met my wife at Milligan's. So.
And I met my wife at a Christian youth conference, like shortly after that whole Teddy incident where he brought me out of that pit. I went to like a Christian youth conference, and my wife was there, and I hung out with her all day at the mall there. And she was from Michigan, I'm from Indiana, and I tried to kiss her at the end of the day, and she goes, I don't think my boyfriend would appreciate that very much. And I was like, this crazy girl had me spend the whole entire day with her, knowing that I was interested, and didn't tell me about this boyfriend she had. But anyway, obviously she broke up with that guy because we've been married for a long time ago. I mean, I hope so. The poor guy.
I'm just kidding.
So anyway, but that's my story and Ezra's story and Mark's story, and we wanted to share this today, just not to talk about ourselves and how great we are, but that God uses everybody in different ways. Everybody's got a different background. Everybody's got a different life they've come from. And you need to find a way to articulate your story. And it may not be as elaborate. It may not even be as, as terrible or as great as what you may have heard today. But it's your story. That's what makes it amazing, is that God has put us all here. We've all had our ups and downs. We've all had our come to faith moment where we've realized who He is and what He wants us to do, at least hopefully. So think about that. Think about how to communicate that to people, because just like that scripture I just read says, sometimes you're going to be called to account for that. You're going to have people who will say, well, why do you believe what you believe? How did you get to this point? So anyway, hopefully you take that to heart. You guys have some closing statements or anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I think that you hit it right on the head. Is, our story is unique, and that's what I was going to add. Is just like Mark, myself, and Joe here, sitting here around 2-3 microphones and a camera. We're average people. I almost said average Joes, but anyway, we're average people. I mean, we are imperfect people. Mm-hmm. That also says we're unique, because God didn't make me the same as Mark or Joe. Right. He didn't make me the same as anybody. He made and cultivated me, to be the only Ezra Davis in this whole planet. So just because you think that your story is not magnificent, or you didn't do a bunch of things, or you didn't grow up in church, or you didn't grow up in the United States, or it doesn't matter. It's because God created you to be you. That's what matters.
Yeah.
And that's what's unique about you and your story is the only starring cast in your story is you. So that's what I was going to leave you guys with is just because it's not, star-studded in all these different huge things that have happened, that's okay because it's you. So.
Yeah. And I'd just like to hit on the fact again that everybody has their own story, and like Ezra said, it's unique. And I think I have the hardest time articulating my own story and my own thoughts. That's just me in general. And sometimes you'll find me just rambling on, but I'll let you know that in my story, it's not all glamour and everything else. There's a lot of heartache in it. I didn't mention a lot of those things, and I appreciate the openness and honesty of Joe and Ezra here. But all of us have experienced heartache. All of us have experienced hurt. We've hurt people, and we've made huge mistakes. And I think what we're doing here is good. We're just trying to be real, and that's just what we want to portray and make a culture of here, because we're not Valley Mills is not a church that pushes people away just because of their mistakes. We don't try to put up a front, even though it's in our humanity that we do so sometimes, but at the core of us, we are open and we are accepting and loving, and we want to know your story. And if you'd like to join us on a podcast or anything in the future, just let us know, and you can share your story and have your story heard, because you don't know who that might impact. Yeah.
Feel free to comment below, like I said, if whatever format you're listening to this on allows you to do that, or you can email Mark. I gave you his address. It's Mark Stair, MarkStair,
I look forward to all the
emails. He wants to hear from you.
Apartment A.
We're going to start airing our personal addresses.
Yeah.
No, but that's exactly right. We're just transparent dudes,
Yep.
and our church is full of transparent people, and we're more than happy to have you if you want to show up on a Sunday. So anyway, thanks again for listening. We'll see you next week, and just think about your story and what you would say if anybody ever asked you. See you later.
See ya. It's actually part of the story that's still a mystery to me. I have no idea how he kept getting into my house.